behalf of FIFER, I welcome you all for the second of the SVTP on phytochemical isolation, standardization and biological evaluation of herbal medicine. Today, the first session is about tradition of modern analytical techniques used in isolation of bioactivities from natural sources by Anna Gowda sir. So I would like to invite Mr. Sweta to introduce her biodata of the Dr. Anna Gowda sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, one and all. Now, I am here to introduce you Dr. H.V. Annegowda, sir. Currently, sir is working as professor and head of pharmacognosy and phytochemistry in Adi Sanjanagiri College of Pharmacy, Bangalore. Sir has obtained his bachelor degree from University of Mysore and master degree in pharmacognosy and phytochemistry from Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences and PhD degree from University of Saints, Malaysia. Sir's research area of interest is identifying the herbs with therapeutical value based on ethnobotanical surveys, evaluation of bioactive compounds and their herbal formulations for analgesic, anti-diabetic and behavioral activities. Sir has nearly 20 years of teaching and research experience. Sir has actively participated in various national and international conferences. Sir has published about 20 papers in reputed national and international journals. Sir has also completed various projects which were sanctioned and funded by Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences. Sir has received many research grants. With this brief introduction, I request Dr. H.V. Annegowda sir to take over the session.
Morning. Good to see you there. So, thanks for the introduction. So, myself, Annegowda, and I worked last 2 years back also I was here for the same institute program. And that was a different crowd, I think, and now this is a different crowd. So, during that time, I talked about the extraction and its importance. Before going into the presentation, I take this opportunity to submit my humble pranam to all my gurus, mainly my parents who are there, who are because of them I am here, and the next important guru is my teacher. I was always blessed to have a very good teacher, mainly like during my PhD. I was having my professor, Mr. Sharif Master Mansoor. He was my guide, and he guided me in a proper way, and he made me like how to do the research, how to behave with the students. Okay. And lastly, our nature, Mother Nature. Okay. So I feel Mother Nature is also like a guru for me because we learn many things from our nature. And from the nature itself, we get a lot of curiosity to do some research, or discovery. So with this small introduction about the guru, I'm going to start my presentation. So today, I'm going to present about the traditional to modern, that is analytical techniques used in the isolation of bioactives from natural products. Am I audible or not? One thing to do. So traditional to modern, when I say traditional to modern, because whatever the chemical constant or the herbs which are using, it is from the traditional knowledge. Okay, this is from the ancient time. Before Christ itself, in India we started using the medicine plant. It might be through the Ayurveda. Okay, or even the Chinese system of medicine, they were using the medicines. Okay, since from before Christ. That's the reason the presentation title is Tradition to Modern, because now we are going to make use of various modern extraction techniques or the isolation techniques, with the help of which we are going to find the chemical constant which is found in the plant, and we are going to use that constant for various purposes. Coming to the contents of this particular presentation. So we are going to discuss about the introduction to the bioactive compounds, what is the meaning of bioactive compounds, then challenges which are in the field of phytochemistry, extraction and purification techniques which we are going to carry out to extract the plant material. Then further that, okay, before we are going for the isolation, we need to purify it, re-purification we are going to perform. Followed by that is the chromatographic techniques, different types of chromatographic techniques which are normally used for the isolation of the chemical constant and also for the purification. Then the different types of chromatographic techniques as the HPLC is there, high performance liquid chromatography, ultra pressure liquid chromatography, then the preparative HPLC mainly used for the isolation of the pure compound. Then TLC as well as the preparative TLC, which is also one of the method with the help of which you are going to isolate minute quantity, like in terms of microgram you are going to isolate the chemical constituent using the preparative TLC. Other than that, I think fractional precipitation, then fractional distillation, sublimation, okay, which are all the different methods which you are going to use it for the isolation of the chemical constituent. Finally, the conclusion. Now coming to the bioactive compounds. So bioactive compounds, whenever we say the compounds, okay, this may be like chemical constituent from the plant. When it is obtained from the plant, we call it a phytoconstituent. Phyto means always, it refers to the plant. It might be phytopharmacology, phytopharmaceutical. In second form, I think the students they study about the phytopharmaceuticals. The pharmaceuticals which are prepared using the means plant. Then phytochemistry in B form, they are going to study about the phytochemistry, where it is nothing but it deals about the chemistry of the plant. So whenever you come to the term phyto, it refers to the plant. So there we are going to study about the bioactive compounds. So the plant contains, we always refer the plants as a biosynthetic laboratory, which can synthesize and store hundreds and thousands of different types of chemical constituents. And all these chemical constituents will be differ from each other, but they belong to some group. It might be like alkaloids, glycosides, tannins, resins, then the primary metabolites like the carbohydrates, and then lipids, proteins, nucleic acids, then it might be the chlorophyll. Okay. So here the bioactive compounds are nothing but the phytoconstituents, the chemical constituents obtained from the plant, but they are responsible for the biological activity. Okay. They are responsible for the biological activity, means whatever the plant which you are using for the different purpose, it might be like anti-cancer activity, analgesic activity, apoptotic activity. That particular activity is mainly because of the chemical constant which is present in the plant. And when we find that particular compound, then we call that particular plant compound as a bioactive compound or biologically active compound. So there is a plant-derived bioactive compounds. Okay, the market for this is around $20 billion, and it is going to be increasing every year. It is going to increase because nowadays everybody is interested in the plant. I think you might have, now we are witnessing that application of these plants. Now during the COVID pandemic, if you see more than the synthetic drug, they are relying on the drugs obtained from the plant, mainly on the ashwagandha. I think even the ICMR, okay, even the NIPER, they used to work on the ashwagandha because ashwagandha is a very good immunomodulator. So during the time of this COVID pandemic or because of the coronavirus, there is immunity is going to go down. So to improve or to increase the immunity or immune power, we are going to use the immunomodulator like ashwagandha. Okay. So that ashwagandha, they have done a lot of work on this and they wanted to utilize the treatment of the COVID. Other than that, I think many of us, use the kashaya. Okay. It might be we are using the pepper or eucalyptus oil, we are going to inhale it to destroy the microbe. Okay. So like that, there is a good demand for this bioactive constituent in the market. Globally, it will be like $20 billion and it is going to increase every year. Then, number of patents related to this bioactive compounds are also going to be increased. If you see the scenario, if you go to the internet and if you search it in the internet, then you will come to know how many patents are registered for this biologically active chemical constituent. And mainly why they are relying on this biologically active chemical constituent, because nowadays nobody want to explore or they are going to go for the synthetic chemicals because it takes lot of time for the synthesis and to make use of that particular chemical the synthetic constituent to develop into a new formulation. It may take 15 years to 20 years. Normally they say 12 to 15 years. But in the plant, already the plants are all found to be safe. That's the reason whatever the compounds are obtained from the plant and the safe plant, not like the datura. I think datura you might be seen, Strychnos naxomica. They're all toxic. Okay, and it's already reported it is as toxic. So the plants which are shown to be potent in nature, and it contains some potential chemical constant. Those types of bioactive compounds, they're going to isolate, and then they're going to exploit it in a different way to develop different types of synthetic chemical derivatives. Okay? That's why number of patents is also increasing for the bioactive compounds, and 63% of the anti-cancer drugs what we are using nowadays, it is all obtained from the plant. Okay? It might be Taxol, or it might be vincristine, vinblastine, then camptothecin, then etoposide obtained from the podophyllatoxin. Okay? So like this, we have plenty of anti-cancer agents obtained from the plant. Even I think last time I was just looking for this Taxol. 5 milligram of Taxol is only 15,000 rupees after GST and all. Okay? 15,000 rupees for 5 milligram. So I wanted to work on the anti-cancer activity. When I checked for this, that was the price. Means it shows that how much important is the bioactive compound. Okay? So using this particular bioactive compounds, they are going to synthesize the derivatives. By looking at the chemical structure of this particular bioactive compound, they are going to plan the synthetic derivatives, semi-synthetic derivatives they prepare. Finally, they are going to prepare the synthetic derivatives. One of the example is like salicylic acid, what we are using, acetyl salicylic acid. It is obtained from the Salix alba. Okay, the bark of the plant, Salix alba, from that they isolated the salicin. The salicin was later converted into salicylic acid. Then they converted the salicylic acid into acetyl salicylic acid, which is nothing but the aspirin what we are using. Okay, so like this, even the quinine, I think all of you know about the quinine, correct? Quinine, it is obtained from the cinchona. So after they isolated the quinine, then they started working on that quinine because we use it for the antimalarial agent. Now we have the hydroxychloroquine. During the COVID pandemic again, they started using it. But the quinine got the effect on the heart, cardiovascular system. It is going to depress the cardiovascular system. That's the reason people who are taking this quinine, hydroxychloroquine, ICQ, they should be very cautious about that because it's going to show its effect. The one more compounds of constituent of this cinchona is the quinidine. Quinidine, I think all of you know, it's used as an antiarrhythmic agent. So these two share the same type of chemical pharmacological property. So what is going to be there? So whatever the chemical constituent which is isolated from the plant, they are going to use them as a starting material or the lead molecule, and using that lead molecule structure, they are going to develop the newer molecule. So quinine, then chloroquine, quinacrine, mefloquine, which are all nothing but the derivatives of the quinine itself. So that's the reason we need the bioactive compounds. So this bioactive compound maybe serves as the lead molecules for the semi-synthetic as well as the synthetic derivatives. So the importance of these bioactive compounds. Why we need these bioactive compounds? Because whenever we want to market the herbal extracts, okay, or it might be the herbal product, when you want to export to the different part of the world, then they will ask us to have the standardization. Means they want the standardization report. So the method of standardization which we are going to use, either we use the TLC fingerprint, we are going to use it for the standardization, or it might be the spectroscopic method, fingerprint which you are going to use, which will be used as the standardization parameter. Once the drug is standardized, then only we are going to export it, because the foreign countries, it might be the European countries or the American countries, okay, America, or it might be the Asian continents, they are all going to rely on this standardization parameter. They will ask you to, they will demand only when they get the standardization report, then only they are going to accept it. Because during the process of standardization, we are going to mention how much amount of the secondary metabolite, means the bioactive compound, is present in that particular the extract, either it might be the formulation. Okay, if I want to export the ashwagandha extract to the US or UK or to the European country, then we have to mention how much amount of the vinylide is present, whether it's 1% or 2%. So when they carry out the assay, okay, when they carry out the assay using the some HPLC or HPTLC method in US or UK, then in that particular extract, maybe 10 gram extract must contain 1% of vinylide. Once it contains the same, then they say it is a standardized extract. If it contains less than that, then they say that it is not standardized, it is a substandard variety. Because the biological activity of that particular extract mainly depends on the bioactive compound. If the bioactive compound itself is less, then it is not going to show the efficacy. That's the reason bioactive compounds are very important for the standardization of the herbal extracts or even for the formulation. What are the herbal formulation we are having? Sometimes we have the herbal formulation of 3 or 4 medicament, means the herbal drugs. So in that case also, the herbal formulation contains the specific chemical constant. So we are going to look for the chemical constant. Like if you want to export the quinine, the cinchona extract, in that case cinchona extract is taken. Then they mention how much amount of quinine is present in the cinchona extract. They say that it contains 5% of quinine. So when it is exported to other country, they take out that extract and they are going to subject it for the HPLC. Once they subject it for the HPLC, they find out how much amount of the quinine is present. Whether they mention claimed amount is 5%, if it contains again 5%, it confirms that it is standardized extract. If the concentration is less than that 5%, maybe 4%, then we say that it's not a standardized extract, it is a substandard extract. That's the reason we are going to use this particular bioactive compound for the standardization of herbal extracts, herbal formulation. And based on these bioactive compounds, we are going to determine the safety and the efficacy. Because all of you know about this digitalis. Digitalis is nothing but this cardiac glycoside. We use it as a cardiotonic. It's a tonic for the heart. Okay, a person who is suffering from the congestive heart failure. Okay, through them we are going to inject with the digoxin or digoxin. Okay, it is going to increase the rate and force of contraction of the cardiac muscle. So that's the reason we are going to use the digitalis. So in that case, the safety margin of digitalis, that's the digoxin or the digoxin, is very less. So if you give a little bit more concentration of the dose, the person is going to die. That's the reason we are going to determine the safety of that particular drug using this particular bioactive compound and the efficacy. Okay, as I told you earlier also, if the concentration is very less, when the claimed amount is more, means they are claiming that 5% quinine is there. But if when they give to the patient, if that a particular extract contains maybe 4% or 3% of the quinine, then he is not going to recover from the malaria. Okay, so there's a problem with the efficacy. Why there is a change in the efficacy? It's mainly because that particular extract or the formulation contains less amount of active constant, bioactive constant. That's the reason, with the help of this particular bioactive compounds, we are going to determine the safety and efficacy of any herbal formulation. Then, to find out the phyto constant with the biological activities, because we are going to take that biologically active constituent, bioactive compound. The same compound may be showing the different pharmacological activity. Like I think all of you use the paracetamol. Paracetamol is used as an antipyretic agent and also as a painkiller. Okay, it will be having the wide different types of pharmacological activity. So if we screen it for different pharmacological activity, maybe antimicrobial activity, it may show some antimicrobial activity also. So like that, we isolate a particular chemical constant based on the traditional claim. Normally, whenever we are going to select a plant for pharmacological activity or for the research, that selection is mainly based on the ethnobotanical survey. We are going to carry out the ethnobotanical survey, means we are going to collect the information from the herbal healers or from our grandparents, okay, or whoever is working in that particular field. We are going to collect that information from them. Then based on that, we are going to select the plant material. Once we select the plant material, then we will take that plant and we are going to screen that plant for the pharmacological activity, biological activity. And once we screen, then we will go for the isolation. And after isolating, again we are going to check the pharmacological activity. Once it proves that the same extract is showing the pharmacological activity and also the same compound which is isolated is also showing the pharmacological activity, then we call that plant material or the compounds as the biologically active constant. So we are going to check this biological activity of the phytoconstant. We are using different models. I think in pharmacology you might have studied, it might be in vitro models or the in vivo models or the isolated tissues where we are going to use this. Then it's also going to be used to find out the synergistic activity, because in the plant we have plenty of different types of chemical constant. Sometimes they may be working individually to show the pharmacological activity, but most of the time the extract we use it, mainly we use the extract, and this extract shows the synergistic effect. Okay, like 2, 3, 4 or maybe 5 different flavonoids, like the quercetin, rutin, camphorol. They work join or they are going to join together and they are going to show the synergistic effect, antioxidant effect. Compared to the individual effect, the synergistic effect will be more with the plant extract. So we are going to isolate the compound and we are going to mix these two compounds and we are going to evaluate it for the pharmacological activity. For that reason, again we need the bioactive compound. Then to determine the stability testing, or we want to see whenever we have take any synthetic medicine. In the synthetic medicine also we have the expiry date. Compound has been degraded or not.
whether it is present in the same form, there is no structural deviation. So to determine the stability of that particular product, we need the bioactive compound. Then to determine the variation in the activity of the samples and extract, because different parts of the plant contain the different type, different quantity of the same chemical constituent. Like in case of the quinine, the bark contains maximum amount of the quinine compared to the roots and rhizomes, the leaves. That's the reason we are going to find this. We use this bioactive compound. Using this, we are going to find out the variation in the amount of the chemical constant in the different extracts of the plant material or it may different parts of the plant. Then the important challenges which are there in this isolation of the bioactive constants or the phytoconstant, because everybody want to isolate the compound, but sometimes when I was working in my master degree, I took almost like 6 months to isolate 3 compounds, and in PhD it took 1 year for isolation of 4 chemical constants. Means isolation, once you isolate the compound, the next step is the purification. After the purification, we need to go for the elucidation of the structure. For that, we need to submit the sample for IR, then UV, then NMR, mass, okay, then CHN analysis. Like this, we are going to subject the same plant, the isolated compound, for different spectroscopical studies. Finally, we are going to draw the conclusion, or we are going to draw the structure of that particular constituent. That's the reason we call the isolation of this bioactive constituent is a very challenging job. Okay, it will take years together for isolation of a chemical constituent. So the one more important thing is that this particular chemical constituents normally found in the minute quantity. Like if you take, like when you say the quinine may be present in the 5%. If you take the whole extract, 1 gram extract contains maybe 5%. Okay. So even at the one of the example is the vincristine and the vinblastine. I think all of you know about the vincristine, vinblastine from the vinca rosea, normally used in the treatment of cancer. And this vincristine and vinblastine, if you take 1 quintal, you are going to get maybe like 5 grams. You take 1 quintal of this particular plant material, dried plant material. From that you can able to isolate only 5 grams of the vincristine or the vinblastine. That's the reason I say this particular the chemical constituents or the bioactive compounds are normally present in minute quantity. So it's very difficult for us to isolate when it is present in the minute quantity. And they are also present, the chemical constant will be present in combination with the sugars, some proteins. They are going to coagulate with them, or they are going to combine with them. They are going to condense with these sugars, and they are going to be present in the plant material. There is one more important problem which is associated with the isolation of these chemical constituents. Then you are going to add the petroleum ether. Okay, once you add to the petroleum ether to that solution, 2 immiscible layers are there. One is the water layer and one more is the organic layer. So now we are going to stir it, or we are going to shake it for maybe 5 to 10 minutes. You have to be careful when you are shaking, because there may be a chance of emulsion which is going to be formed if you shake it vigorously. And then it will take like 1 day to break that emulsion. So that's the reason you have to shake it slowly. So what happens now, after shaking and keeping, then there will be a separation of these 2 layers will take place. So when we go for this type of liquid-liquid fractionation, when we added the petroleum ether, or it might be the hexane, so whatever the compounds which are present in the extract, okay, there may be like when you go for the extraction using some normal solvent, it might be the methanol or the ethanol, along with the polar compound, non-polar compounds, okay, medium polar compounds, all of them will be present. And we are not looking for the non-polar compounds like the fats or the lipids or the chlorophyll. So when you want to remove it, we are going for this liquid-liquid fractionation. So now in the hexane layer or petroleum ether layer, the lipid content will be there. Then we are going to separate, we are going to collect the lower aqueous layer or the polar layer, and we are going to take out that particular, the upper layer, the organic layer. Okay, and we are going to again add some more amount of the same petroleum ether or the N-hexane. So we are going to 3 times, we are going to repeat it until whatever the petroleum ether soluble compounds are there, that should, we want it to get dissolved in the petroleum ether layer, and it should transfer from the polar layer to the non-polar layer. Until that we are going to repeat the same experiment, liquid-liquid fractionation. So then after we subject it for the liquid-liquid fractionation using the petroleum ether, next one we are going for the ethyl acetate. Okay. So now again to the same aqueous solution, we are going to add the ethyl acetate. We add the ethyl acetate, again we are going to stir it or shake it for a few minutes, and we will allow it to get separated. Now the medium polar compounds are going to get present in the ethyl acetate layer. Then we take out the ethyl acetate layer, we are going to evaporate it and you are going to have a ethyl acetate fraction. And ethyl acetate fraction may contains the medium polar chemical constituents. After that, the next, to the same polar solution, okay, aqueous solution, we are going to add the N-butanol. The next liquid which we are going to use will be the N-butanol. So N-butanol again, highly polar compounds are going to get dissolved by the N-butanol, and now the N-butanol layer contains the polar compounds. Okay, so always whenever we are going for the liquid-liquid fractionation, we are going to use the solvent which is immiscible with the water. Okay, so that you are going to get the two different layers. Finally, you are going to left out with the water extract or the water fraction which contains highly polar, maybe sugars are present or the tannins are present in that particular the liquid or the water extract or the water fraction. So like this, when you go for the liquid-liquid fractionation, you are going to separate all the 100 different chemical constituents or the 200 chemical constituents are now distributed into like 4 fractions. One is the petroleum ether fraction, second one is the ethyl acetate fraction, then the N-butanol fraction, finally you are in the water fraction. So in these 4 fractions, all the chemical constituents are going to get distributed based on the partition coefficient. I think all of you studied about it. They are going to get distributed equally, not equally, based on the type of the chemical constant. Maybe fatty substance will be going to the petroleum ether layer. Okay, highly non-polar, like medium polar compounds will come to the ethyl acetate, and slightly lesser medium polar compounds will come to N-butanol, and highly polar compounds will be present in the water fraction. So this is the one way we are going to purify the sample or the extract. Before we are going to use it for the further isolation technique, we are going to pre-purify it. Otherwise, like in case of the chlorophyll, all of you know when we go for the leaf extract contains more amount of the chlorophyll, and we need to remove the chlorophyll. How we can remove? Either we can use this ethyl acetate or the chloroform, and you can wash that particular extract with this then the chlorophyll is going to get washed away. Or you can use the petroleum ether also, or N-hexane. When you take the extract, wash the extract with the N-hexane or the petroleum ether, the chlorophyll which is present in the extract, it is going to be removed. All of you should remember, you keep it in mind, even water will also behave like a non-polar solvent when you heat it at a temperature of 100 degrees centigrade. That's the reason at 100 degrees centigrade, whenever we are preparing, I think the non-veg, like mutton sambar. So there if you see, when you heat it, the fat which is present will be in the liquid form. But when it come back to the room temperature, the fat layer will be floating on the surface. Okay, so this mainly because at a temperature of 105 degrees centigrade, boiling point of water will behave like a non-polar solvent. That's the reason even the organic compounds are going to get dissolved in the water at the boiling point of water. So here we want to separate the chlorophyll from the extract. How we are going to separate it? Either we wash that particular extract. One should extract the plant material using any solvent. Then after extracting, we want to remove the chlorophyll. We take that extract. To that extract we add the hexane or the petroleum ether or diethyl ether. So now diethyl ether, the petroleum ether, it is going to dissolve the chlorophyll present in the extract. So that's the one way. Otherwise, we take the extract, we are going to add lead acetate to that particular extract solution. So lead acetate is going to precipitate the chlorophyll which is present. But this is a tedious process. Again, lead acetate present means again we are going to add what is that? Sulfide, hydrogen sulfide. We are going to pass it through that solution because we want to precipitate the lead as a lead sulfide. So like that, we need to remove the lead also from the solution or the extract. But rather than that, you can only wash that particular extract with the help of the hexane or the petroleum ether. That's the one more method of making the pre-purification. Then the proteins, normally in the plant material, we don't want the protein. Proteins are not going to show any pharmacological activity. We always consider these proteins as the primary metabolites. All of you may be knowing about the primary metabolites and the secondary metabolites which are normally found in the plant. Primary metabolites are nothing but the compounds which are present in the plant, and they are having the primary role in the growth and development. Like even in our body, we need the carbohydrate as a source of energy. Then the protein is required. Then the amino acids are required, and nucleic acid is required. Because these are all the primary components which have important role in our growth and development. Similarly, in the plants also they are the primary metabolites which are going to play an important role in their growth and development. Like I told you, carbohydrates, then the proteins, then nucleic acids, and it may be chlorophyll and the lipid. So this protein is not having any important pharmacological activity. That's the reason we need to remove the proteins also from the extract. Otherwise, they are also going to interfere with the isolation process or the pharmacological activity. So for the removal of this protein, we are going to add, we take the aqueous extract, we take the extract, we are going to add the water to that particular extract, then we are going to add the aqueous ammonium sulfate of different concentration. So when you add it at this particular concentration, the proteins are going to get precipitated. Once it's precipitated, then we are going to either centrifuge it, okay, or we will allow it to get sediment. After that, we are going to filter and we are going to collect the clear liquid and we are going to throw the precipitate. Then the fats and oils, what we have, which is also going to interfere with the extraction or isolation purpose. So we are going to remove it with the help of washing with the light petroleum or the dichloromethane. Sugars, normally if you take the sample aqueous extract, if you add methanol or it might be ethanol or the acetone to that extract solution, then the sugars are going to get precipitated. So like this, the primary metabolites we are going to precipitate with the help of this type of the different methods. This is the pre-purification method which is normally employed before you are going to subject the plant sample for the like isolation of the biologically active chemical constituent. If you have any doubt, you can ask me. Okay. Then coming to the isolation technique. Anyway, all of you know about the isolation technique. The important isolation technique will be the chromatographic technique. It's the main technique with the help of which you are going to isolate. I think all of you already learned about this chromatographic technique in one or the other, like it might be in the analysis. That's in the modern pharmaceutical analysis in case of the M-Pharm or industrial biomedical analysis in B-Pharm. Even in the Pharm D also they are going to learn about the analysis where you are going to study about the chromatography. And the term chroma means always is the color, then the graph. So here in case of the chromatography, we will going to separate the chemical constant based on their like affinity towards the either phases. There will be two phases which are going to use it in the chromatography. One will be the stationary phase and one will be the mobile phase. So the compounds that have the more affinity towards the stationary phase, it will stay along with the stationary phase. But the compounds that have the more affinity towards the mobile phase, it will move along with the mobile phase. So here there will be two phases, one is the stationary phase and the mobile phase. So in between that we are going to keep our sample, and the sample, okay, it's a mixture of maybe like 10-15 compounds will be there. That compound will be in the varying polarity. The polarity of the sample is going to be weighted, and based on the polarity, okay, it is going to get separated from the mixture. And its polarity or its separation is mainly based on the affinity towards the stationary phase or the mobile phase. So there is a formula, I think they say this is a partition coefficient which gives that how much amount of this substance is a ratio of the substance concentration in the stationary phase to the substance concentration in the mobile phase, which gives the partition coefficient. Okay. So if the partition coefficient is there, that is going to get eluted faster. If it is more, it is going to stay in the stationary phase for long time. Okay. So here the separation is mainly based on this affinity towards either the mobile phase or towards the stationary phase. So the various techniques are there in the chromatography. We have the adsorption chromatography, partition chromatography, reverse phase partition, then we have the ion exchange chromatography, size exclusion chromatography, okay, affinity chromatography. Like this, we have the different methods of chromatography techniques where we are going to separate the compounds based on the type of the chemical constituent. So the first one, I think if you see, this one is the adsorption chromatography, where the like a silica gel, which is in common used one is the silica gel, which is adsorbed on an inert material, which might be aluminum foil or aluminum sheet or the glass or the plastic, on which you are going to put the adsorbent. And we are going to allow the mobile phase to pass through it. It's just like it's a molecule or a drug molecule. So we will allow the mobile phase to pass through it if that molecule got the affinity towards the stationary phase, then it will stay with the stationary phase. It will not move with the mobile phase. If it got less affinity towards the mobile phase, it got more affinity towards the stationary phase, then it will stay with the stationary phase. It will move with the mobile phase. If it got less affinity towards the mobile phase, then it will stay with the stationary phase. then it will be there. If it is going to stay with the stationary phase. If it has more affinity towards the mobile phase, then it will move along with the mobile phase. And also it's based on the polarity of that particular compound. If the compound is more polar and the mobile phase is also more polar, then that compound is going to go along with the mobile phase. So the second one is the partition chromatography, where we are going to have a solid support on which we are going to coat the silica gel, and this silica gel is coated with one more liquid layer. Okay, so now the drug molecule is going to get partitioned between this is the one liquid phase and one more mobile phase that is also liquid. So in between these two, the compound is going to get partitioned. So based on this partition coefficient, it is going to move, whether it will be staying with the mobile phase or it has to go along with the mobile phase, or it has to stay with the stationary phase. So this is the difference between the adsorption chromatography and the partition chromatography. Partition chromatography is again a liquid-liquid chromatography, where the adsorbent is also contains the liquid layer, and also the mobile phase also contains the liquid or the liquid substance solvent through which the stationary phase or with the chemical constituents allowed to pass through it. Then we have the ion exchange chromatography, size exclusion chromatography. We have some slide we can go through it. Then when we want to use this, the mobile phase, when we want to select it for the separation in the column chromatography, we are going to look into the various criteria like polarity index. I already told you the polarity index of the different mobile phase of the solvent is going to be varied. Like hexane is highly non-polar in nature with the polarity index of 0.1, and it is increasing order toluene, benzene, diethyl ether, dichloromethane. Okay, this is the increasing polarity index of the different solvents which we are going to use. And based on this only we are going to select the mobile phase. Okay, whichever the compound you want to elute it from the column. Okay, you are looking for the compound which is medium polar, then we go for either the chloroform or it may be the dichloromethane or the ethyl acetate. Or you are looking only for the non-polar compound, then we will go for the hexane. Okay, if you are looking for the highly polar compound, then we will go for the acetonitrile. I think normally in the column chromatography, we use the acetonitrile or the methanol. Or sometimes the buffers are also going to be used in the column chromatography. And why this nature, the polarity is going to be changed, it's mainly based on the structure of that particular solvent. If you consider the hexane is very non-polar, highly non-polar because there is no double bonds or there is no electronegative atoms present in the hexane. That's the reason it is highly non-polar. But when it comes to the toluene got the slight polarity because it contains the aromatic ring pi electrons. I think maybe in the analysis you studied about the pi electrons. Okay. Then dichloromethane, it contains 2 chlorine atoms. Okay, because of which it is more polar than the toluene. Then chloroform contains 3 chlorine, CaCl3, so it contains 3 chlorine atoms. That's the reason it is more polar than the dichloromethane. So like this ethyl acetate, if you consider it contains oxygen atom. Then the butanol again, it contains a highly polar due to the hydroxyl group. So as the hydroxyl group is present in more quantity or more number, then the polarity is going to be increased. So this is the reason behind the polarity of that particular solvent, why they are highly polar, why they are highly non-polar in nature or medium polar in nature. Then coming to the stationary phase, we have the various stationary phase which are going to use it. I think we have the normally used stationary phase is the silica gel. All of us used for the different purpose, maybe PLC plate you used I think in your studies, or when you run the column, then we are going to use the silica gel again. Silica gel of different like mesh size we are going to use it. Maybe like 60 to 120 mesh size, or 120 to like 240, or it may be up to 400 mesh size is there. As the mesh size increases, the particle size is going to be decreased. Okay, at the lower 60 to 120, the particle size is bigger. Then the mobile phase will pass through that particular the column very fast. It's just like a pebble. If you take the sand particle, the sand particles are bigger in size, and if you pass the water through it, it will flow faster. But if you take the clay soil is then a very fine. The soil is very much small. The shape or the structure or the size of that particular clay soil is very small. That's the reason water is going to pass very slowly through that clay soil. Similarly here in case of this column chromatography, whatever the adsorbent we are going to use, it is mainly based on the the particle size of that particular adsorbent. Silica gel, we have the different size silica gel, and we are going to choose it based on the compound which you need to separate it. So we have the silica gel, when we have that cellulose, alumina, okay. Then we have the other one like the Cefadex is there, polyamide is there, dianes are there. So these are all selected based on the type of the chemical constants, whether you want to isolate the proteins or you want to isolate the sugars or the tannins, okay. Based on that, we are going to use the different types of stationary phases. So now I think column chromatography, all of you know maybe used about this type of technique. In your lab, might be have undergone the demo, they might have demonstrated this column chromatography, where we are going to take that silica gel. This is the silica gel, this is the column what we use, and the selection of the column is also based on the amount of the sample you want to separate. If your extract is around 5 gram of extract, then the 10 times of that we are going to add the silica gel. 5 gram extract is there means like 50 gram we are going to add the silica gel. So before you are going to add, you are going to put a cotton wool here, or even the glass wool, you are going to put it in the bottom in order to prevent the loss of the silica gel. After that, we are going to load the column with the silica gel, and when you are loading the column, we are going to use either the dry packing method or the wet packing method. The two methods are there. One is the dry packing method, where we take the silica powder and we directly put it into the column. Then we start adding the mobile phase. Whenever we are adding the mobile phase, or whenever we are passing the mobile phase, whichever the mobile phase which we are going to use it in the beginning, first time when you are going to allow it to pass through it, the same mobile phase we are going to pass through it. Okay. So first you add the silica gel, the required quantity like I told you. If you have 55 grams of extract, then 50 grams silica gel. That's again you have to optimize it. Okay, it's going to be varied based on a person to person. It's going to change. I always use that 1:10. So 1 gram means 10 grams silica gel I am going to add it. So some other researchers may add more, because more the column length, separation will be good. Okay. So after that, like if case of the wet packing, dry packing, pot the powder, then allow the mobile phase to pass through it, and we have to make in such a way that it has to get stabilized. And once we see there is no bubbles coming out from this column, until that we need to allow the mobile phase to pass through the column. Because if the air bubbles are present in between, if you don't remove it properly, then what happens, after you load the sample, then once you start moving, there may be air bubble which is present in between, then it will help in the tracking of this column. It's going to allow this column to get tracked, or it is going to interfere with the separation of the bands. That's the reason we need to make sure that we are going to allow this mobile phase to pass through it without the sample. Before adding the sample, we are going to condition this column. How we are going to condition this column? Continuously we are going to allow this mobile phase to pass through it, and once we assure that there is no more air bubble, okay, we are going to take a glass rod, we are going to push that particular glass rod inside into this, then we will see any air bubble is coming out. Okay, once it is confirmed that there is no air bubble, then it says that this column is now ready for charging, or we can now mount the sample. And in this case also, we are going to take the sample and we are going to absorb the sample on the silica gel. We take the sample, to that sample we will make the solution of the sample, to that we are going to add the silica gel, and we will make that silica gel to get absorbed with the sample. Then that silica gel powder we are going to put it on the silica gel. From the book and some of them from the internet, because we cannot prepare animation is difficult. But I always prefer whatever I do the work, I will only explain that one. Because out of my expertise area, I will not go for that out of that. This reason, mainly I will be working in this isolation and some pharmacological screening. That's the main area of interest of mine. So only I prepared the slides based on that one only. Okay, if you have any doubt, you can ask me with respect to that. Since I am a pharmacognosy person, because my master's is in pharmacognosy, but my PhD is in pharmacology. Because in abroad we won't get pharmacognosy. That's the reason I pursued my PhD in pharmacology. So anyway, I think this is the things which is normally used in the isolation. So we are discussing about the isolation of the compounds using the column chromatography. I told you already this, after you charge whatever the sample you adsorbed on the surface of the silica gel, you are going to mount it on the top of the silica gel. Okay, this is the adsorbent. Again, you are going to add the sample. Once you add the sample here, we have to make sure that mobile phase, whatever the mobile phase which you are going to use, we should be always above, like 1 or 2 centimeter above this the sample. Otherwise, what happens? If it comes down, then because of the lack of solvent which is present, it will start cracking. The column start cracks. Once it cracks, then you cannot use it because there is an improper separation of the same chemical constituents going to take place. So we are going to charge this. We are going to add the mobile phase, and we have the reservoir. Sometimes the column will be having some reservoir like 500 ml or the 1 liter of mobile phase. We are going to keep it in the reservoir itself. So we will be slowly adding the mobile phase. So in the beginning, we are going to start with the non-polar solvent because some of the chemical constituents which are non-polar in nature, they are going to get separated. Like one band, the extract may contains now 10 different chemical constituents. And when we add the N with this ethyl acetate, or it might we will start with the highly non-polar mobile phase, like it might the hexane or petroleum ether. When you add 100% of petroleum ether or the hexane, then only the compounds which are soluble in the petroleum ether will move along with the mobile phase, and you are going to collect it. So if there is nothing is coming out, it indicates that this sample contains the medium polar compound. Then we are going to change the polarity. This is a like gradient elution. We say elution means we are going to allow the solvent to pass through this column, and we are going to collect that eluent. This is the elution. So once we find that there is no more compound coming out from the column, then we are going to change the mobile phase. Means the polarity of the mobile phase is changed. So what we are going to do now, instead of 100% petroleum ether, we will make 25% ethyl acetate and 75% petroleum ether. So now the polarity has been changed. Once the polarity is changed, again we are going to run the column. Okay, we allow this mobile phase to pass through it. Always like if the 50, we add the 50 grams of the silica gel, 3 times of the volume. Okay, like 50 means 5 and 50 ml, 50 ml, 50 ml. So 150 ml of solvent or the mobile phase which we are going to allow it to pass through it. Then we are going to check it out whether the chemical constant is obtained or not. Okay, so this is like as you increase the polarity, okay, we call this as a gradient elution. If you use only one mobile phase, we call it as an isochromatic elution because a single type of mobile phase is used. Then if you are using maybe 50-50, means petroleum ether 50% and ethyl acetate 50%, that is a continuously running with the same column, same mobile phase, we call it as an isochromatic. It's the same mobile phase. But if you are using a increase in polarity of the mobile phase, we call it as a gradient elution. Okay, where you are going to slowly you are going to increase it from 100% petroleum ether to 25% ethyl acetate, 50% ethyl acetate, 75% ethyl acetate. Finally, you go to 100% ethyl acetate. Then ethyl acetate with the methanol. Okay, then 10% methanol and 90% ethyl acetate. Then you go to the 25% methanol, 75% ethyl acetate. So this one will call the gradient elution. And as you combine these mobile phases, maybe like ethyl acetate with the petroleum ether, the polarity is now increased from 0 to it will become like maybe 1% polarity, then 2% polarity. The compound which is having a 2% or the 2 polarity, it will come along with the 2 polarity mobile phase. So that's how the separation takes place. I think in the picture it is the first one is having the highly non-polar nature, means compared to this band it is more non-polar. That's the reason it is going out along with the mobile phase and it is collected. The second one is slightly polar. That's the reason it is collected in the later phase. Okay, this is how we are going to collect it. And whenever we are collecting, it's very easy to see like this. Okay, but it is not practically when you go, it is not so easy. Some compounds are colorless in nature. Okay, it may not be, you cannot see it properly, but it is separating. Because colored means I think when you go for the ultraviolet UV visible spectroscopy, all of you know ultraviolet means it will be 180 to 360 nanometer. I think all of you know about that range, 380 nanometer, where the colorless compound will be there. But visible range means whichever the solution, which color it can be visible, that will be screened, or we are going to evaluate at the visible range, that is a 380 to 800 nanometer. Okay, that's how we are going to use that range, because we will decide whether it's a colored sample or the non-colored sample. So if it is a colored, you can see easily and you can see in the column. It looks very easy in the picture, but when it goes to the practically, where there are a lot of problems. Okay, and even when you are applying also, like if you apply the solvent directly on the top of this, there will be disturbance of the sample. That's the reason we have to put a cotton plug on this top, so that whenever you add mobile phase, it is not going to disturb this. Okay, either you are going to add the cotton plug on the top of this, then there will be one more layer. On the top of that, you are going to add the mobile phase. So like this, then whenever you are conducting this, we collect this eluent and we subject it for the TLC, okay, thin layer chromatography. Then we will check whether the compound is separated or not. Maybe like I told you quinine, just like example I am telling you quinine, we are looking for the quinine. So either it might be, if it is a quinine, is the target compound assisted isolation, where we are going to check, we collect the solvent and we are going to apply it on the TLC plate. Once you apply it on the TLC plate, we run with the help of the mobile phase and we look for that quinine is separated or not. If it is not separated, then we collect again maybe 50 ml, and this 50 ml we take a TLC plate, again we are going to apply it and we should look for the presence of the quinine. So like this, each element we are going to collect it and we are going to subject it for the TLC, and whichever the TLC or whichever the element which is showing the same type of the chemical compound, okay, the bands which are same, that one we are going to use it for the, like we are going to combine it, like so like we have like this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like this we are going to have the TLC plate. We are going to collect all the element. In that element 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So whatever the column element which we are going to get it, we are going to run it on the TLC plate. So after this we are going to apply, we are going to put it in the mobile phase is there, and then we will allow this sample to pass through it. Okay, the solvent mobile phase to pass through this particular silica gel. Then the first may contains quinine or may not contains, so it is not going to get eluted in the mobile phase. The second may contains a little bit amount. Third also may contains. Fourth may contains, along with this there may be one more compound. Okay, so then what we will do? We are going to collect the band A, B and band C. These two are collected and we are going to put it in a container. These two are collected in a separate container and we will keep it separately. And this contains now two compounds are there. And in this one, okay, this is okay, only one compound. This compound is there. This may be, I consider the quinine. So this one we are going to put it into a single container. Then in this one, the D and E, okay, it contains two bands. One is the quinine and one more will the quinidine. So here again we are going to put it into one container again. We are going to put it and we are going to allow it to get evaporated. The solvent we are going to allow it to evaporate. In this you are going to get only the quinine. But in this case we are going to have quinine with the one more compound. Again, if the two compounds are there, again we are going for a one more column chromatography. Okay. We are going for the one more column chromatography, with the help of which we are going to again separate these two compounds, the quinine and quinidine. We want to separate it again. We put it into one more column and we are going to run it again until you are going to get a single compound. So this is how we are going to use the TLC. At each and every step we are going to use the TLC. All the element which we are going to obtain, we are going to put it on the TLC and we look for that particular compound, whether that compound is eluted or not. Okay. Simultaneously, there is a target compound guided isolation. In case of biological activity, all these compounds we are going to miss the fractions which we are going to collect in column fractions. We are going to collect it. After collecting, we subject it for the biological activity. But here, when we look for the biological activity, we cannot go for the in vivo. Okay, we cannot go for the animal activity. Instead of that, we will go for the in vitro cell activity. Cell line we are going to use. I want the antibacterial activity using some microorganism, okay, or some enzyme study, because we need micro quantity there. Because we are going to get only few milligrams here. We are not going to get grams together. We get only few milligrams. That's the reason we are going to carry out. We take the sample and we are going to check the pharmacological activity. So if we do like this, then we call it as a bioactivity guided isolation. Okay.
So either we look for a particular targeted compound in each column fraction, or we are going to look for the biologically active fraction. If this fraction is showing the pharmacological activity and this fraction, say column fraction, is not showing the pharmacological activity, then we are going to neglect this fraction. We are going to choose only this fraction. And we are going for the isolation of this particular R. Once you concentrate it, once you reduce the element or the mobile phase, then ultimately the left out sample will be the winning. So this is how we are going to run the column chromatography to get the pure compound. Sometimes it may be pure or it may contain a small amount of the earlier compound may be present along with this. Then we are going to subject it for the further purification. Because I think if you see the, like whenever you purchase something from the Sigma Aldrich or from the other companies, Merck, the pure compound they mention 99.5%, 99.9%, it will be very expensive. Because the purity that will be determined with the HPLC method, they mention 99.9% means it's highly pure. Only 0.01% is the impurity, so it will be very expensive. But when it is 99.5 or it went 98%, it is very cheaper because the purity is lesser. Most of the cell culture studies, they need a highly pure compound. That's the reason it will be very expensive. There's one more advantage of this bioactive compound because the bioactive compounds are very expensive in nature and the percentage purity, if the purity is more means it will be sold at the higher price. So this is about the column chromatography. So ion exchange chromatography, again it's just like a normal column chromatography, but in this we have the different types of ions are there. Okay, there's a weak cationic ion, then strong cationic ion, then the anionic ion, then the strong anionic resins ions are there. So here the same column, you have the column and you have the stationary phase and the mobile phase. So when we have the cationic resin, we want to separate the anions. Okay, if the extract contains an anionic compound, then we are going to charge this column with the cationic resins. Once you add the cationic resins, because it carries the positive charge. So what happens? The cationic resins will be there. These cationic resins are loaded into this column. Then the anions are going to get attracted towards this. Then you are going to add the mobile phase. Like your charge here plus or minus will be there. Cations and anion in the sample. Okay, the mixtures are present. So once you charge, then the cationic resins are going to get attract these anions which are present in the sample, and the cations are going to get expelled out. They are going to get eluted first. Okay, highly whatever the compounds are highly cationic in nature, more number of positive charges are present, they are going to get eluted fast. Okay, compared to the one which is having the less number of the cationic charges. After that, what we are going to do? We are going to change the mobile phase, the polarity of the mobile phase, or we are going to change the mobile phase in such a way that even these anions which are present are also going to get eluted by changing the mobile phase. This mobile phase will be having the different charge. So like this, we are going to make use of the ion exchange chromatography, where we are going to make use of the diion is there. Okay. Normally I use the diion and also I use the amberlite, where we are going to use this, we are going to separate the compounds based on their charge. So that's the reason we call it the ion exchange chromatography. Similarly, when you go for the size exclusion chromatography or gel permeation chromatography. So in this, we are going to use the Cefadex, LS20 is there, Cefadex G10 is there. Different types of Cefadex are available, which is nothing but the dextran. Okay, the dextran is cross-linked together to obtain the different types of Cefadex. And Cefadex is also very expensive. It's not like silica gel. Silica gel may like 500 gram may cost you like 2,000 rupees or maybe 1,000 rupees. But Cefadex LS20 100 gram itself is around 30,000 rupees. Okay, it's very expensive, and mainly we are used only when you want to separate some compounds like the bigger molecules you want to separate. The compounds with the high molecular weight when you want to separate it, then we are going to make use of the size exclusion chromatography. As the name indicates that exclusion means the removal of the compounds or the bioactive compound based on their size. This is a size exclusion chromatography. Or gel permeation. because the gel which is going to be present. So in that gel, whatever the compound is permeated, it is going to pass through. Okay, so which is going to separate it based on the molecular size of that particular compound or the molecular weight. Whichever the compound which is there, like now we have this particular the mixture of compounds are there. The molecular size and the molecular weight is going to be varied. So here we are going to take the gel, either the subject Li20, G10, G25, whatever may be the type of the gel we are going to use. This gel which is prepared and we are going to load it into the column. After that, we are going to take the sample. The sample contains the different types of compound. Okay, the extract may contain the different types of compounds of different size. So here what happens, these gels are having a minute pores. Okay, in this minute pores, the smaller particles are going to have the compounds with the lower molecular weights are going to get stuck. But the bigger particles are not going to be stuck here. They are going to move easily in the column. But in the beginning, the bigger molecules or the compounds with the high molecular weights are going to get separated. Okay, here we are going to use the mobile phase. I think normally the water will be used as a mobile phase, or we are going to use the water with acetonitrile or water with the methanol. Okay, polar solvents are used in the case of this particular size exclusion chromatography. So here the gel, the compounds with the higher molecular weight, first they are going to get separated, followed by that is the medium size compounds, finally the minute compounds or the compound with the smaller molecular weights are going to get separated. So this is how the separation takes place in case of the size exclusion chromatography. So here this is the chromatography technique where the compounds are separated based on their size or the molecular weight. Thus is also known as the gel permeation chromatography or the size exclusion chromatography. I think anyway HPLC I put like a picture from Google. It's a very simple one. I think all of you know about it. It will be hanged at two reservoir, the solvent. Then there is a pump. Based on the pump, whatever the pressure you want, whether in terms of the bar or maybe PSI, pounds per square inch. We are going to use this pressure because that pressure also again I think all of you know about the pressure. How we are going to use it, because if the particle size is less, what the pressure you use, higher pressure or lower pressure is required. High pressure, why? Just now I told you correct, like in case of the soil, with the sand, okay, sand means bigger particles, the water will flow easily. But if you take the clay, the water will not flow easily because pore size is very less. That's the reason you need to apply the pressure. So finer the particle size, more pressure we need to apply. That's the reason in case of this, okay, if the column contains whatever the adsorbent, if the particle size is 5 micron, okay, then we may use around 750 psi. Okay, if the column particle size is around 2 micron, then the particles become very small. Then we need to apply the more pressure to make the solvent to pass through it. We may go up to 15,000 psi in UPLC, ultra pressure liquid chromatography. Okay. Why I am going to HPLC? Because the higher version, I told you traditional to modern. So traditional method of separation is the column chromatography, and the updated method of this column chromatography is the HPLC, UPLC. Okay. So we use the pump. With the help of the pump, we are going to pump the solvent through the column. So this particular pressure, back pressure what we are going to use, is mainly dependent on the particle size and the length of the column. The UPLC column, I think all of you might have seen, it might be like the column length maybe 5 centimeter. Okay, but normal HPLC column it will be like 15 centimeter to 10 centimeter. And the particle size is also in the UPLC, the particle size is very less. It may be 2 micron or 3 micron. And the separation will takes very fast. Within 10 minutes you can get the separation of all the compounds compared to the HPLC, which may take 60 minutes, 90 minutes for the separation. Okay. So we have the sample which we are going to inject it. After injecting, it is going to pass through the column. I think some cases we have the guard column which is going to protect the main column from the impurities. Before I think you know that we are going to pass through it some membrane filters. The sample should be filtered to the membrane filter and the solvent should be degassed using the sonicator. After that only we are going to use this solvents on the mobile phase.
and there will be like a software will you can key in the data, how much should be the concentration, how much should be the B. Sometimes isostatic means the same concentration will be running, and sometimes you are going to time it. You are going to say at 5 minutes time, this should be 5%, this should be 95%. After 10 minutes, it should be 25 and this should be 75. So that's the gradient dilution option is also there. So once you pass your sample to this column, so along with this mobile phase it will be flowing, and the compounds are going to get separated based on the polarity, okay, or based on its affinity towards the column or towards the mobile phase. Whichever the compound which is having the more affinity towards the mobile phase, they will flow with the mobile phase. Whichever have the compound which are having the more affinity towards the stationary phase, they are going to stay with the stationary phase. But as you increase the polarity, even the compound which are already adhering on that particular stationary phase are also going to get eluted. So this is the HPLC, or the principle which is involved in the high performance liquid chromatography or the ultra pressure liquid chromatography. Then the preparative HPLC, because we are discussing in the HPLC, you can isolate the compound, but the amount of the compound which you are going to isolate will be very small quantity in terms of maybe microgram you are going to collect it. But when you go for the preparative HPLC, the difference between the preparative HPLC and the normal HPLC is the only this column what we are going to use. The column what we use, it will be bigger compared to the HPLC, because we need to separate more amount of the compound. Anyway, I have the next slide where I put the table. In the table I mentioned what the difference between the HPLC and the preparative HPLC. So here we are going to have a software where you are going to allow the sample to pass through this column. Once the column will be bigger, and the particle size is also bigger, and also the diameter of this column is also going to be bigger, because now we are going to load more amount of the sample into this column. That's the reason we need the bigger column. If we have the short column, the compound is going to get eluted very fast, and we cannot extract or we cannot isolate the more amount or more quantity of the compound. That's the reason we have the long column, and the particles adsorbent is more. Okay, then more amount of the compound means the extract can be loaded, and more amount of the compound can be separated. So once it is separated, when it goes through this, then what happens? We are going to allow this particular, whatever the element which is coming out from this, it is allowed to go through the detector. Okay, whatever the sample which is coming out, it is going to pass through the column. In the column, it is allowed to go through the detector. In the detector, what happens? Once you see there is the compound which is getting separated in the detector, we are going to get a peak. Then we are going to program it in such a way that when we get the peak, immediately we will allow that particular solvent which is coming out from that column. Okay, instead of going into the waste, we are going to collect it. We are going to collect that particular compound. Once it started appearing in the software, okay, in the system, if you see, there is the appearance of the column, or sorry, peak. From the beginning of the peak, we will allow that particular solvent to go through the, instead of waste, we are going to collect it into the vial until the peak comes down. Okay. Then again, when the second compound started eluting, again it is the detector is going to detect that there is a compound which is started eluting, and we will direct that particular the waste into the container, and we are going to collect the second compound. So like this, we are going to carry out the isolation or the separation of the compound from the mixture of compound using the preparative HPLC. One of the difference is the size of the column, which is going to be varied compared to the normal HPLC. Okay, this you can see the column, the size of the column is very big and also very long. And I think I have this is the difference between the normal analytical HPLC and the preparative HPLC. So normal analytical HPLC, I think all of us know why we are using the normal HPLC. It's only for the qualitative and the quantitative analysis. Means we are going to take that, we get the peak. From the peak, we say whether the plant, that chemical constant is present or not. We are going to find it out with the help of the analytical HPLC. But when it comes to the preparative HPLC, the main principle or the main goal of this preparative HPLC is the isolation of the pure compound and the purification of the compound. But in case of the analytical HPLC, it's only the qualitative and the quantitative analysis. Qualitative means when we run a HPLC, we will try to find out whether that particular compound, whether it is present or not. Because when I say this preparative HPLC or the analytical HPLC, we run the column, okay? Then we look for this is a standard peak. This is a peak TLC fingerprint or the HPLC fingerprint, and then we take our sample and we will run the same sample at the same chromatographic condition, and we are going to overlay it whether it is going to give the same peak. This is the qualitative HPLC. Means if we get the same peak which are overlaying each other, then we say that both of them are same. Like the plant extract contains the same type of compound. In case if any peak is missing, if you see this peak is missing, only we are going to get only 2 peaks. It indicates that there may be chance of adulteration. Okay. That's the reason we are going to find out. We are going to use this method for the qualitative purpose. Okay. Qualitative means we see whether the compound is present or absent. That's a qualitative. But when you go for the quantitative, we will check the area under curve, AUC. Okay. How much quantity of this chemical constant is present? More the area under curve, more will be the amount of the chemical constant which is present. If the area under curve is less, maybe in this compound also it contains, instead of that, if it contains less amount of the chemical constant, it indicates that the amount of the chemical constant is less. Once the chemical constant is present in lesser quantity, the theoretical efficacy is going to be changed or the efficacy is reduced. So that's the reason this is the quantitative analytical purpose or quantitative purpose we are going to use this HPLC. But in case of the preparative HPLC, the main goal is just for the isolation and the purification. We are not going to look in for the qualitative, means whether the compound is there or not, we will not look it for that. We are going to only aim for the isolation of the compound and the purification. Then the mobile phase reaches anyway, I think I told you, it's going to reach the detector and finally it is going to waste. But here the mobile phase is recovered, means we are going to collect it and we are going to separate the compound from that. Then the amount of the sample which you are going to load it, maybe if you, I think you, whoever is the HPLC, you are going to use like few microgram you are going to inject into the HPLC column. But here 30 milligram of sample is, we are going to load it into the injector and we are going to allow it to get separated. Then the column particle size I told you, it's only 5 micron, very small particle size is for the normal HPLC. But preparative HPLC it will be more than 5 micron. That's the difference. Then the flow rate is 1 to 2 ml, we use it anything in HPLC, but in case of the preparative HPLC, it will be like 10 ml per minute. Sometimes they are going to use even the 20 ml, 50 ml per minute also, because they need to isolate the more amount of compound. The column diameter 1 to 5 millimeter, but it will be here 1 to 10 centimeter. You just imagine this 10 centimeter. If you remember the scale, you will come to know how much will be the diameter. So like this, the column length is also going to be varied. And in case of this preparative, the analytical HPLC, we look for as many peaks as possible to get separated. Sometimes you might have seen maybe 10 peaks, 15 peaks we want to separate. But in case of this preparative HPLC, we will not look at the number of peaks which are separated. We are only looking at the peaks or the compounds of our interest which need to be separated. Okay. So this is the difference between the preparative HPLC and the normal HPLC. And then one more, I think, the flash chromatography is also one more method which we are going to use it. This Sinclair is more advanced than the preparative HPLC. Flash is nothing but the same chromatography technique, column what we are having. To that we are going to pass the nitrogen gas. If you have the column in your lab, then if you pass the nitrogen gas, then you are going to apply the positive pressure. Because of positive pressure, the liquid will, the mobile phase will move slowly. Instead of the normal, I think in the normal column, because of the gravity, the mobile phase will be moving. But in case of the flash chromatography, you are going to apply the pressure using the nitrogen gas. Sometimes if you don't have the nitrogen gas, what we'll do, we have that aeration pump, I think, which you use it in the, what is that, fish tank. The same, I think we are going to put it into the column. Okay, we'll allow it, we are going to block all the things, we'll make that particular aeration pump into that column, and it is going to create that positive pressure there. It will make that solvent to pass through it. So this is a flash chromatography, I think the Pucci company is supplying it, which also contains the software, there's a column, then there's an UV detector will be there, then there's a fraction collector, pump will be there.
So once you are going to inject the sample, that will pass through this mobile phase, will carry it, it is passed through the column. Once it is getting separated, it is going to get detected by the detector. Once it is detected, then they are going to test tubes will be there, many test tubes. They are going to use it, and they are going to key in the data in such a way that as soon as they find the peak, they will make that particular peak to get collected in the test tubes until the whole peaks are going to get eluted out from the column. So this is the flash chromatography. Then the next one is the high-speed counter current chromatography. I think it's just like a centripetal chromatography. We call it the centripetal chromatography, where it's just like a circular disc will be there. On the top of the circular disc, sometimes we are going to use the liquid absorbent will be there. Sometimes we are going to use the solid absorbent. Then we are going to apply the sample in the middle, or we are going to apply it in a circular form on this particular adsorbent, and we are going to fix it onto a circular motor. Then we will allow like a wick, we are going to keep a wick which will be there, and through which the mobile phase is going to be passed, and we are going to make this plate to circulate. And because of the centripetal force, the mobile phase will move through it. As it moves, it will carry away the chemical constant which is soluble, which will also move along with this, and it is going to get separated radially. Okay, finally what happens? There will be a collector. That collector, the solvent on the mobile phase is going to get collected, and that is allowed to pass to the detector, and the detector will detect it whether the chemical constant is separated or not. So this is the principle behind the centripetal chromatography, and in the higher version of this is the high speed counter current chromatography. Okay, it will be rotating at a higher speed, maybe 1500 to 2000 RPM will be the revolution per minute. It will be rotating at that speed. Then the mobile phase will pass through this wick. We are going to collect it, means we are going to have a wick, okay, through which the mobile phase will be passing, and as it moves, because the centripetal force, the mobile phase will move. As it moves, it will carry away the compounds are visible with this, mobile phase is going to get separated. So this schematic diagram, I think you will get it in the internet also, the same thing. It's not so clear. Then the thin layer chromatography, anyway, I think this is a TLC. We are going to have a demo there also. The TLC I am going to explain you in detail, because almost I think we are running out of time. That's the reason I will explain you in detail in the demo in the afternoon session. We have the hands-on session, during which I am going to explain you about the TLC, thin layer chromatography. So, but still, we should remember about the mobile phase. Selection of the mobile phase for the TLC is a very important step in the separation of the compound. There, I think we take the sample, we are going to apply the sample on the TLC, and we will allow to pass through different types of mobile phase. I told you about the different mobile phase will get the different polarity index, and they have the different solvent strength. Then you can see the same compound will pass through the different mobile phase on the TLC plate. Some of them are going to get not eluted. Maybe diethyl ether is not eluting. With the methanol, it is eluting, means it's highly non-polar in nature, polar in nature. And tetrahydrofuran, with 2 bands are here, then acetic acid is doing here. So like this, we are going to get a different pattern. So from this, we can't use any one single mobile phase for the separation of a compound. So from this, we can see this 5, 6, then 8. These 3 are showing some compounds are separated in these 3 mobile phase of the solvent. But it's not clear. The compounds are separated, but they are overlapped. We want these compounds to get separated clearly. So how we are going to make it? Then we are going to make a mixture of these 3 mobile phase. Okay, we are going to mix it all these 3, so that we have to have all these compounds should get separated clearly. But even when you use this all these 3, but you can see when you mix it, the compounds are not so clearly separated. Means
The resolution of bands is not so clear. Resolution means the separation of the bands is not so clear. So what we will do, we have the prisma triangle. This is the prisma triangle. Okay. So in this we are going to look at, this is the solvent 6. Okay. So then solvent 5, solvent 8. So we are going to bring this, all these 3, the 2 mobile phase, we are going to make it like the same. How we are going to make it? We are going to, we are going to add the hexane, and we are going to make change the solvent strength in such a way that all of them will be on the same mobile quantity or the same volume we are going to use.
How we are going to use, like here you can see a solvent mixture is made using the dichloromethane, then the chloroform. So this is the dichloromethane peak at the band, and these are the ethyl acetate and chloroform. So ethyl acetate and chloroform is mixed with the hexane, and we are going to make it. We get a mobile phase, and this that mobile phase, when you use it, you can see there is a clear separation of all the 4 bands. So this is how we are going to determine, or we are going to find out the suitable mobile phase using the prism triangle. Then anyway, I think these are the different types of adsorbents which are used on the PLC plates. Then the HPTLC. Okay, I think anyway HPTLC is available. Then what is that? One of the company which is going to supply this is the Camar. Is the one company which is going to supply the HPTLC, and it will be like, if it is a complete automated, it will cost around 80 lakh rupees. So where we have the sample applicator, you have to just, normally we are going to apply it manually, but here in this case we are going to apply it, okay, automatically. You are going to fix the volume to be applied, how many microliter, 1 microliter, 10 microliter. You can key in the data, the same volume is applied. Either you want to apply it in the form of the band, or you want to apply it in the form of the spot. You have to inform, then it's going to apply it in the same form. After that, you are going to take this plate, you are going to put it in the TLC trough. Okay. Sometimes planar chromatography means you are going to make it horizontally, you are going to keep it, and you are going to allow the mobile phase to pass through it. Okay. So otherwise, you are going to use the normal TLC cabinet, in which you are going to keep the mobile phase. After you keep the mobile phase, you keep the TLC plate, and you will allow the, because the capillary action, the mobile phase will move over the TLC, means the silica gel, and the compounds are going to get separated based on the affinity towards the mobile phase. Then it is going to get, like, once it is collected, then you are going to scan it. We have a densitometry scanner based on the amount of the samples which are selected. Once the band is separated, and based on the intensity of the compounds present in the band, you are going to use the densitometry scanner. That scanner is going to scan it. Wherever the density is more, you are going to get the high intensity peak. Wherever the density of the band is less, you are going to get a small peak. So that's the outcome we are going to make use of the densitometry scanner. Then this is the difference between the TLC and the HPTLC, because I think all of us know about the TLC. Whatever the layer of the adsorbent, it is around 250 micrometer is the layer of the TLC. With the HPTLC it will be, HPTLC will be 100 micrometer, is very thin. And the amount of the particles is also, the particle size of this HPTLC is also very small, and the resolution of the band is also very good with the HPTLC band, HPTLC plate. But the cost will be like, one plate will be around 1,000 rupees. Okay, 20 plate will be around 20,000 rupees. But if you want the normal TLC plate, 25 plates, 20 by 20, it will be 8,000 rupees. That's the difference between the HP-TLC and the normal TLC. So the volume which you are going to apply is going to be varied, band length, then developing distance. In case of the HP-TLC, if you need to use only around 6 or 7 centimeters, only length is required. But in case of the TLC, we need to use around 10 to 15 centimeters. That much height we are going to develop the TLC plate. But in case of normal HP-TLC, only 6 centimeters. Then sample spotting, anyway, I think I told you already, we are going to use the auto sampler, so it is going to get applied automatically, but in case of this, it's manually. So efficiency wise, it's very good in HP-TLC compared to TLC. And finally scanning, we are going to scan it with the help of the densitometry scanner in case of the HP-TLC. So this is the difference between the HP-TLC plate and the TLC plate. If you see the resolution of the band, HP-TLC is giving the good resolution of the band. With the TLC, you can see the resolution of the band is very broadened. The band is broadened. That's the reason when you want to use the TLC or the HP-TLC for the final presentation, or when you want to go for like publication, it's always better to have a HP-TLC plate rather than the normal TLC plate. Then the limitation of the TLC or the HP-TLC, it's because I think we are going to expose our TLC plate to the atmospheric condition compared to the HPLC, which is already like everything is kept in the same container. There is no exposure of the solvent or the sample. Okay, we are going to inject and it will be in the same place. But in the HP-TLC or the TLC, we are going to expose the atmospheric condition to the light, oxygen, humidity, everything. That's the reason that is the one drawback of this particular HP-TLC or the TLC. Then the resolution of the band is not so good compared to the HPLC. Then separation of the biopolymers. Biopolymers, normally they need to be present in the liquid. If which is not possible in case of the PLC. Then, which is several steps are carried out manually. So, reproducibility of the method is matter of concern, because many times we take the PLC, we are going to keep it on the plate and we are going to allow it to develop. Then we take it out again, we subject it for the densitometry scanner. So like that, we have the several steps. That's the reason chances of this problem there will be more. Then the last one is the preparatory PLC, the same PLC, where in the preparatory PLC, the thickness of the plate is more. Compared to the normal PLC plate, the thickness is more. That's the reason we are going to separate the compound. Okay, then I think the last three will be fractional precipitation. So fractional precipitation means here we are going to separate the compound based on the precipitation technique. So normally the alkaloids are going to get separated, or we are going to purify, isolate this based on the fractional precipitation, where we are going to take the extract. To that extract we are going to slowly increase the pH from the lesser pH to the higher pH. As you add the acidic compound or the acid like tartaric acid, okay, so some of the compounds which are weaker or weakly basic in nature are going to get precipitated. Then you are going to increase the pH from like 2, then 3, 4, 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7. As you increase the pH, the corresponding compound which are present are going to get precipitated out from the extract. Normally we use this one in case of the strychnine and brucine if you want to isolate the compound from strychnine and somica extract. If you want to isolate strychnine and brucine, we are going to follow this technique. Or even in the synchronalkaloids like quinine, quinidine, synchronine, synchronidines are all going to get separated out or precipitated out by the fractional precipitation. Then sublimation, I think is nothing but where like camphor. Camphor is obtained by the sublimation, where you take the chips of this, the bark of the camphor, free you are going to collect it and you are going to heat it. Once you heat, without going to the liquid phase, the vapors are going to be formed, and we are going to allow the vapors to be accumulated on the surface of the cold region. Once it gets accumulated, it is going to get condensed and it is going to get separated. Okay, the non-volatile compounds are going to get separated. Okay, it will be like a it will be left out as the impurity, but the volatile compounds are going to get converted from the solid phase to the gaseous phase, and it is going to get accumulated on the frozen area, and you are going to craft and you are going to use it. Now, I think the camphor is there. Then, other than the camphor, I think we are also going to use it. The caffeine from the tea also going to be isolated by this the sublimation method. Last one, I think this is the last one. That is the fractional distillation method. Normally, distillation is used for the isolation of the purification of the volatile oil. Now, volatile oil means the oil which is going to get volatilized very fast. It might be the clove oil or the cinnamon oil, okay, which kind of cinnamic aldehyd or eugenol, okay, which are all the volatile oil. So these type of oils are normally separated by the distillation method. Fractional distillation means it is an instrument where you are going to adjust in such a way that the temperature is going to be increased slowly. Okay, there will be instrument, and in that instrument, like you are going to increase maybe 30 degrees centigrade, 35 degrees centigrade, 40 degrees centigrade, 45, 50. So as you increase the temperature, a compound with the different, okay, which got the different types of different the melting boiling point, which is at the different boiling point. Maybe the volatile oil which is at the boiling point of 50 degrees centigrade. When it reaches the 50 degrees centigrade, it is going to get evaporated and it is going to get collected. Okay, but it's not going to get evaporated to 40 degrees centigrade. It will get evaporated only at the 50 degrees centigrade. So then from 50 you are going to increase the temperature to the 55 degrees centigrade. At the 55 degrees centigrade, only those volatile oils which are going to get volatilized, become like a vapor at 55 degrees centigrade are going to get separated out. So this is nothing but the distillation to fractional distillation, means from the normal distillation method we have modified it in such a way that we are going to slowly increase the temperature, and as you increase the temperature like gradient, okay, slowly, maybe 5 degrees centigrade, 2 degree, 4 degree, 5 degree, okay, whatever maybe the degree temperature you are going to increase, the corresponding the volatile liquid is going to get separated out by the distillation. So this is the fractional distillation method. This is, I think, one of the things, but it is normally used for the crude oil fractionation. Mainly it is used in the petroleum product.
where different temperature we are going to apply and different types of compounds are going to get separated out from the distillation method. Finally, coming to the conclusion, anyway, I told you about the importance. The bioactive compounds have a vital role to play in the field of herbal drug industries as well as the synthetic industry, because I told you, using this herbal drug, the compound which is isolated, which is as a lead molecule, they are going to synthesize the semi-synthetic derivatives as well as the synthetic derivatives. That's the reason it plays an important role in the herbal drug industries as well as the synthetic industries of pharmaceutical industries. And the extraction and the purification, pre-purification is the key step which is involved in the isolation of the pure compound. If we don't follow this, then maybe if you don't use the proper extraction technique, you will not get the expected targeted compound, bioactive compound or the targeted compound is not going to be obtained. If you are not going to make use of pre-purification, proper pre-purification is not done, then there may be chance of interference with the proteins, lipids or carbohydrates. That's the reason of the chlorophyll. So we need to subject the samples for the pre-purification so that it will be easy for us. It will make the process very easy for the isolation of the bioactive compound. Then the quantity of the compound also depends on the various internal and external factors I told you. Various factors are going to influence it. Maybe the solvent or the amount of the extract what you are going to use, or the external factor means it might be the stirring method what you are going to use, ultrasonic wave, microwave, which are going to use, which are all going to influence the amount of the compound which we need to separate it. Then it involves hundreds of different techniques, and each extraction technique involves different types. There are merits and the demerits. Okay, not all the samples will get all the techniques will get the same advantages or different disadvantages. Different techniques show the different types of different advantages. So it's a tedious process, but as I told you, like whenever you look for the pure compound, whoever is working the herbal drug, if you look for the pure compound is always very expensive. But if you get the synthetic compound, you may get the lower price. But the synthetic compound, you have to spend like thousands, like maybe I told you, 5,000, 10,000 rupees for the 99.9% pure isolated bioactive compound. Then normally in the end, I think it opens the avenues for young scientists to work in the isolation or regulation of the same in the pharmacological evaluation. Okay. So with this, I'm going to conclude the presentation. Thanks for patience listening. So if you have any doubt, you can ask me.
Thank you, sir, for making a better understanding in isolation of the bioactive compounds. Now I request Dr. Somashekhar Reddy sir, Pradeep sir and Sudesh sir to facilitate our speaker.